Hey, welcome back to the series. In this next step of the process, we're going to set everything up in Character Creator 5 as our main project file and prepare all of the meshes so that we can texture them inside Substance 3D Painter. So the first thing to keep in mind is that Substance 3D Painter requires every mesh to have UVs. Right now, only the meshes that originally came from CC5 have UVs. Everything that we created in ZBrush doesn't. So the step one is to generate UVs for those pieces before we send them to CC5. I like using a dedicated tool called Rizom UV, but let me give you an example so you can see how easy this is. I'm going to select something like the shoulder pad mesh and click on Send to Rizom UV from the plugin. And by the way, this is a free plugin. It's not included in ZBrush by default, but you can download it online for free. This button will send the mesh straight into Rizom UV, where you can create the UVs really easy, and then you can bring it back into ZBrush, and that's it. So I'm going to show you the general workflow first, and then speed things up a little bit because it is one of the boring things to watch. So when it comes to UVs, the process is very simple. Step one is to mark seams. This is where you can select and mark all the edges that you want to cut. Because my topology is already clean, I can just select the entire edge loop and just cut out those pieces away. And this is something that I will repeat for all the pieces. In Rizom UV, you can double click an edge and it's going to select the entire edge loop. And then you can just cut it. You can press the letter C on your keyboard to cut it. So it's very, very straightforward. Now, step two is adjusting the UV islands. Rizom UV has some great features. For example, you can select a long strip of geometry that is all crooked, and then you can straighten them up in a single click. That's it. And this is perfect for straps or belts or anything where you want to apply a repetitive pattern in Painter that will follow that UV nicely. Now, step three is just to pack those islands to optimize the space. Once all the pieces look right individually, we can go ahead and pack them to arrange everything efficiently. You can even preserve alignment. I like keeping pieces oriented logically so that when I'm texturing, it makes it a lot easier for me. So the kneecaps or the shoulder pads and things like that will be oriented in a specific way so that when I apply the texture, it just follows that, let's say, vertical or horizontal flow or pattern a bit better. And once you're happy with the UVs and the layout and everything, just click Save or Control S and head back to ZBrush. Then from the same plugin, click on Get from Rizom UV. This is going to bring the UVs back into ZBrush, and that's it. The workflow for the rest of the pieces is identical, but it is very boring to watch. So I'm going to skip the boring repetition and just move on straight into setting things up into Character Creator now that all the meshes that I created and that I sculpted have the UVs. All right, so the process of sending things back is super straightforward, basically a one-click operation. But there are a few things just to keep in mind. First, make sure that all of the extra pieces are named clearly so that you can recognize them easily. Also, ensure that the meshes that come from CC5 don't have any extra numbers or any extra weird name at the end of their names. Because it happens, and sometimes when you save things from ZBrush, it can add suffix or it can change the name. So make sure that it has exactly the same names that had in CC5. Now, in CC5, I set the current pose to A pose, and you don't really need to do that, but it will work just fine. But I prefer to work that way. Now, back in ZBrush, I'm going to open up the GoC Plus plugin again. And I'm going to leave all the settings the same exactly as I did before, but this time, instead of using the GoC button, I'm going to click on All, and this will send every single piece at once. Now, depending on how many meshes you have, this takes a few minutes, since it is not only transferring the selected subdivision levels, but also baking the sculpted details into normal maps. All right, and when CC5 opens again, you'll see the GoC options window. Every object that starts with the CC, as in Character Creator, should show the action as Update, since basically those are the meshes that originally came from CC5. So we're literally just sending them back or updating them. Any new piece that you created in ZBrush, like in my case, the chest piece or the boots and all of that, they should say Create Cloth as the action. Now, I'm going to keep everything else as default. Make sure that the A pose is selected unless, you decided to sculpt in T pose or a different pose, and then just click Update. That's it. Everything now is in Character Creator 5 and automatically skinned to the base mesh. How cool is that? Of course, some of the new elements might need some tweaking since, ultimately Character Creator 5 doesn't really know automatically, what these pieces are or what they represent. But fixing all of this is very easy. For example, these pieces that I made for the gloves look really bad and really crooked and out of place. But not a problem. We just need to tell CC5 what they are and what they're meant to be. So I'm going to select the glove mesh and I'm going to go to the setting panels and click on the transfer skin weights. And from the pop-up window, in my case, I'm going to choose the gloves template because this is what matches that piece in, or at least in the area that I want to place them. So this is going to tell Character Creator 5 that these pieces that I selected belong to the hands and fingers. Done. And that fixes the issue perfectly. I also like to test the rigging with a quick animation just to check the deformation of the different pieces. So from the motion dropdown, go to action, male, and choose something like the walk cycle, for example. And to see the shapes a bit more clearly, I like to change the diffuse color of all the new pieces from that, overexposed white color to a dark gray, just for testing so I can see things a bit better. Don't worry, we'll replace all of these with actual textures once we get to Painter. Hit play from the animation window, and now you can, rotate around and see the deformation in real time with an actual animation. In my case, for example, the neck piece and the chest plate are meant to be kind of like metallic solid pieces. So, and currently they are deforming with the body. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to select the chest piece and I'm going to click on skin weights. This is basically to edit the influence of the joints. And in this case, it's going to be pretty easy because it is a rigid body. So all we need to do is select every single vertex of this mesh and assign 100% influence to the correct bone, which in my case is the CC_base_spine02. So that locks this piece and it won't deform when the character moves the arms or the head. We can go ahead and do the same thing for something like the belt and select all the vertices and assign it fully to, again, in my case, the CC_base_pelvis and test the walk cycle again. Perfect. At this point, it is a good idea to go ahead and save your Character Creator 5 project. And that's it for this video. In the next one of the series, we're going to start the texturing process and we're going to send everything to Substance 3D Painter. I'll see you there.